Hey guys, what's up? So, in another Mongol related video, we're going to be looking at the Mongol invasions and the Mamluk-Ilkhanate wars. So this is definitely be very interesting, as I guess we're going to be seeing how Mamluk Egypt dealt with the Mongols. So I'm really looking forward to this. I think we have touched on it before, um, some battles between the two and how Egypt managed to actually remain autonomous. So, yeah. Um, if you want to watch the original video by Kings and Generals, the link is down in the description down below. And, if you enjoy my content and want to help me out, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. It would really help my small but humble channel grow. And I'd appreciate it a lot, thank you. With that said, and now without any further ado, let's get to it, shall we? Let's watch the Mongol invasions, the Mamluk-Ilkhanate wars by Kings and Generals.
The defeat of the Mongols at Ain Jalut in 1260 was not the end of the war between the Mongols and the Mamluks, and over the next 50 years they tried repeatedly to avenge their losses, only to be halted by the Mamluks' valiant resistance. In this video, we will look at the efforts by the Mongol Ilkhanate to bring their horses to the Nile, further conflicts with the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt, and the battles of Elbistan and Homs. Shout out to With the death of Mongkur in 1259, the Mongol Empire was irrevocably broken. While Hulagu and his successors stayed on good terms with his brother Kublai, Hulagu was the independent ruler of a vast domain stretching from modern Turkey to the Amudarya, known as the Ilkhanate. Hulagu's cousins in the Golden Horde, Chagatai Khanate and the Negideris, were almost immediately antagonistic to the Ilkhans, who found themselves defending their distant frontiers from all three, in addition to internal revolts. For the Ilkhans, the Mamluks were but one frontier amongst several, one they could only turn to when the threat from the other Khanates was low. For the Mamluks, their border with the Ilkhanate along the Euphrates River was of the utmost importance. In the aftermath of Ain Jalut, the Mamluk Sultan Qutuz was assassinated by the energetic Baybars. Of immense ambition and drive.
Yeah, we've covered the Battle of Angelut, I think the History March version, so I am aware of what happened in that battle, but I am surprised to see that, they battled for such a long time, 50 years. That's quite the rivalry. And the Mamluks certainly were, fortunate. They used diplomacy, getting the Mongols to fight the Mongols, like making deals with the Golden Hordes, and it doesn't help that the Ilkhanate already has several frontiers of battle between the Golden Horde and anything eastward. So definitely its position here is definitely not the most favorable, only in terms of the various fronts it needs to fight. And I think that definitely relieved pressure from the Mamluks,
Baybars understood clearly the danger the Mongols posed and set up his entire kingdom to defend against them. He expanded the Mamluk regiments, encouraging good relations with the Golden Horde, Genoese and Byzantine Empire to keep up the flow of Turkish.
Yeah, Baybars was amazing. When we covered the How to Defend Against the Mongol series, the Egypt portion, I was impressed by how Baybars devoted his life to stopping the Mongols in diplomacy, in, warfare. He was a genius through and through, and, beyond effective. Just a great leader, exactly what Egypt needed,
Slave soldiers from the steppe. He established a sophisticated intelligence network to inform him on the Ilkhanate and spread misinformation within it, supported by a system of signal towers, messenger pigeons, improved roads, bridges and relay stations to rapidly send messages. Frontier fortifications like Al-Bira and Al-Rabba on the Euphrates were strengthened, and Baybars would immediately march from Cairo when the Mongols raided. His swift reaction kept border officials loyal, feeling their sultan would soon be there to assist them or to punish defections. Garrisons withdrew and regrouped at designated locations during invasions, facing the Mongols with united forces or awaiting the sultan. Baybars cultivated relations with Bedouin nomads across Syria, who provided valuable auxiliaries and intelligence, and he kept them from allying with the Mongols. Finally, he strengthened his position domestically, controlling the economy and appointing caliphs to legitimize himself, presenting himself as the defender of Islam. Baybars prepared his entire kingdom for Mongol attacks. It was a highly effective system the Ilkhanate struggled against, but demanded great personal ability on the part of the monarch. After Ain-Jalut in September 1260, a Mongol force of around 6,000 returned to Syria that December under Baydar. This force was defeated by the combined garrisons of Homs, Hama and Aleppo near the grave of Khalid bin al-Walid, aided by thick fog and the timely flanking of the local Bedouins. This first Battle of Homs, where the Mamluks were outnumbered by the Mongols, strengthened the feeling that the Mongols were not invincible, while demonstrating the importance of unified defense rather than having garrisons hiding behind city walls. It was also the last major Mongol offensive into Syria in the 1260s. Hulagu spent the following years fighting with Burqa Khan of the Golden Horde over the valuable territory of modern Azerbaijan, which Burqa believed belonged to the House of Jochi. In February 1265, Hulagu was succeeded by his son Abaka, who was distracted by Jochid attacks and the realities of setting up a new empire. Baybars used this period to turn to the isolated Crusader strongholds. From February to April 1265, Baybars conquered Caesarea, Haifa, Arsuf and Galilee, and raided Cilicia. In 1268 he took Antioch, and in 1270–71, when Abaka was dealing with Chagatai and Neguderi invasions in the Far East, Baybars took fortresses like Crac de Chevalier and Montfort and planned to attack Tripoli, the Ilkhan's vassal. Hulagu and his successors sent letters to the kings and popes of Europe, encouraging them to take up a crusade against the Mamluks and together defeat them, but this almost always fell on deaf ears. Louis IX's crusades had resulted in utter debacle at Tunis in 1270, which dampened whatever minor enthusiasm for a crusade was left in Europe. An exception was the arrival of the English heir, the future Edward I, at Acre in May 1271 with a small force, and Abaka sent an army under Samagar, the Mongol commander in Rum, to assist him.
Wow.
However, Samagar's force withdrew with the arrival of Baybars. Edward's troops performed poorly on their own minor raids, and
Okay, that's really interesting. You know, seeing Baybars being a big thorn and helping in the end of the, you know, Crusader kingdoms, which I find very interesting. And again, I think if I had to attribute a word to describe Baybars, it's vigilant. I feel that his entire reign is built on vigilance. That he is constantly on top of his game, constantly ready for any assault, any attack from anyone. Mainly the Mongols, because they are the biggest threat in the world at this point still, even though they have taken a lot of L's. But still, they are a force to be reckoned with for sure. And so again, Baybars is just a vigilant man who has prepped to perfection. So I think that, yeah, if I had to give him any praise, is that his constant vigilance is cannot be understated. The man was a genius through and through.
set sail for England in September 1272. Taking part in Samagar's raid was Mu'in al-Din Suleiman, better known as Pervina. Pervina was the dominant figure of the rump state of the Seljuks of Rum. The Seljuk Sultan Kaykusrah III was a young boy, so Pervina acted as co-governor with Samegar, forming a stable relationship. But when Abaka appointed his younger brother Ece, Pervina chafed under the increased financial burden and supervision, and asked Abaka to recall his brother, claiming Ece was in cooperation with Baybars. Abaka promised to recall him, but delayed. In his frustration, Pervina reached out to Baybars. The Sultan's curiosity was piqued, but he didn't commit. By the time his response reached Pervina in 1274, Ece and Samegar had been replaced by Tokonoyan, and Pervina didn't respond. Under Tokonoyan, Mongol pressure was even greater in Anatolia, and Pervina's powers were limited. In November 1275, the Mongols besieged Albira, but Baybars had learned of it in advance, allegedly due to contacts with Pervina. At the same time, with or without Pervina's support, a group of the Seljuk emirs met with Baybars in July 1276, urging him to attack. Judging there was enough support in Rum for him, he agreed, mobilizing his army over winter 1276 and setting out in February 1277.
Oh, this is interesting.
As Baybars sped up the Levantine coast, Pervina lost control of Rum as various Turkmen rebelled, and a new Mongol.
Yeah, definitely. We do know that eventually the Seljuk of Rum, though technically under the Mongol banner, still kind of was, at least later on, its own thing, if I remember correctly from, like, the First Crusade series and the Rise of the Ottoman Empire. And this is a very interesting new light to see Baybars. Baybars has been playing the defensive game against the Mongols, you know? He's just defending his territory, fighting back any attempts to encroach upon it. So this is definitely a new side where he is now on the offensive and going out of, you know, his kingdom, his sultanate, to now fight the Mongols. So this is interesting. I'm really looking forward to seeing how he does now that he's on the offensive, you know?
Mongol army under Tudawan cracked down on the emirs who had contacted Baybars. In Syria, he sent a diversionary force from Aleppo over the Euphrates, while his main army entered Anatolia in late April. After pushing off a Mongol advance force of 3,000 in the Taurus Mountains, news reached Baybars that Tudawan was camped close by on a plain near the town of Elbistan. He set out for them, the armies meeting on the 15th of April, 1277. Tudawan's army was about 14,000 strong, divided into 11 contingents of 1,000, consisting mostly of Turkic heavy cavalry fighting in a style similar to the Mongols, with a 12th contingent of 3,000 Georgians. An army of similar size under Pervina, made up of Rumi troops, was stationed nearby, but Tudawan distrusted them and kept them away from his lines. Tudawan's scouts had failed.
I'm wondering if that's gonna come back to bite him. Definitely keeping my eye on the, you know, Seljuks in the rear here.
To judge the size of the Mamluk army, which he believed to be smaller and not led by Baybars. In reality, the Mamluks outnumbered the Mongols by a few thousand. As the Mamluks entered the plain at the narrow end, they were unable to properly form up, and their centre was positioned before their left wing. The Mongol left flank began the battle, sending arrows into the Mamluk standard.
I'll say this, the Mongols definitely caught the Mamluks in a bad position, at least for that. Again, before they could fully line up, and the positioning is awful here, because they didn't have time to get the left wing up. So this is a pretty good time for the Mongols to attack, I'll say.
Bearers in the centre before charging them. The Mamluk centre buckled under the charge, and the more exposed Mamluk left wing was similarly pounded by the Mongol right. The situation was critical for the Mamluks. Likely at this stage, their Bedouin irregulars fled. Baybars forced in his reserve, the garrison of Hama, to reinforce his left, and succeeded in pushing back the Mongols.
Dang it. Sorry about that, I needed to speak with my grandmother there for a second. But, yeah, like I said, the Mongols got the Mamluks in the perfect attack when they were crossing here. And things are looking, at least at the beginning, not so hot for the Mamluks, though these reserves might help turn the tide, or at least get them out of this, you know, more narrow space.
A brief respite allowed the Mamluks to better deploy their lines and counterattack. The Mongols fought fiercely, but the greater numbers of the Mamluks made the difference. Gradually forced back over the course of the day, their
yeah, these Seljuks are the ones that got me. They're the wild card. Like, a part of me is thinking they're either going to attack the Mongols in the back, or they're just gonna leave. I'm expecting betrayal, but you never know with history. But I having people you don't trust behind you is the dumbest thing you can do. You know what I mean? But who knows, maybe they won't do anything, I don't know. I guess we'll see, eh?
Forces exhausted and unable to access remounts, the Mongols dismounted, signaling that they were fighting to the death. With great struggle, the Mamluks defeated them and killed their commanders.
Oh, dang.
The Seljuk army took little part in the battle and dispersed. Pervina escaped, but his son was captured by Baybars, who the next day marched for Kayseri, reaching it on April 20th.
Oh, wow. I guess just the Seljuks just didn't, participate. To be fair, that was kind of the Mongols' fault, like you said. He didn't trust him. But, alright, never mind.
Baybars ordered Pervina and the Seljuk Sultan support him, but Pervina held out in his own castle. Both realized that Baybars would not be able to hold his position, deep in enemy territory, with supplies running low, while the rest of his kingdom was unprotected and a furious Abaka rallied his army. 5 days after entering Kayseri, Baybars was en route back to Syria, and though his vanguard deserted to the Mongols, by June he was in Damascus. Abaka arrived in Anatolia too late to catch Baybars, and in his fury was only narrowly persuaded out of massacring everything between Kayseri and Erzurum, while the summer heat kept him from invading Syria. He was able to catch Pervina though, and put him to death.
Dang.
Find what you like.
Ended one of Baybars' most skillfully executed campaigns.
Yeah, Baybars went on the offensive, and yeah, he managed to win the battle and just bail. So good on him.
Lightning quick and devastating, it created a terrible mess for the Ilkhanate. It was a great shock when the Lion of Egypt suddenly died at the beginning of July 1277, shortly after his return. Baybars had hoped to establish a dynasty, but his sons were deposed from the throne, and one of his Mamluks, Kalawun, finally became the Sultan in November 1279, though this was not uncontested. This was a golden opportunity.
And the loss of Baybars is a big one, man. I mean, the man, arguably one of the greatest sultanates of all time, at least in his era, right? Just because, look at how effective he was in just beating the Mongols, and again, man, a tough act to follow, but Rep Baybars, the dude was amazing. I'm actually very impressed by him.
For Abaka, who put together an army under his inexperienced brother, Mongol, who raided Syria in November 1280 with a contingent of the Knights Hospitallers and the vassals of the Ilkhanate, King Lewon III of Armenian Cilicia and Count Bohemond VII of Tripoli. In September 1281, Mongol returned again with 40 to 50,000 Mongols, Armenians under Lewon III, Georgians, Franks, and troops from the Seljuk Rum. Abaka initially followed with another army, but an attack by the Golden Horde at Derbent forced him to hold back. The Mongol invasion provided a common enemy to unite the Mamluk factions fighting for power, and under Kalawan they advanced, reinforced by Syrian garrisons and Bedouins. They reached
Yeah, I'm interested in seeing how Egypt is without the great, Baybars in control. You know what I mean? Like I said, his loss is a big one because of how dependent, Egypt was on him. But again, no man is immortal, right? No one's gonna be around forever. And while you'll be gone, your kingdom will continue. And definitely, we've seen this before where a kingdom is really heavily dependent on one great leader or king or emperor, and then once they're gone, someone else has to follow them, hopefully competent, but we've seen times where someone not so competent follows, and then it all ends up bad. So definitely he has to follow big footsteps behind Baybars. And this is the proving point, right? The make it or break it to see if Mamluk Egypt, well, we do know it continues, but you know what I mean. To see just how it continues without Baybars and hopefully left in capable, good hands,
Homs a few days before the Mongols in late October, giving their troops a chance to dig in and rest on the plain north of the city while making their preparations, as a Mongol defector informed them of Menka Temur's plans. Most of the Mongol army was to be placed in the center, with the right wing also being strong, intending to overpower the Mamluk left and center where the Sultan's banners would be. Kalawan reinforced his left wing and positioned himself on a hill behind the vanguard to
Okay. Working with great intelligence. The Mamluks have great intelligence, so now, okay. Alright, that's smart. Now he's planning accordingly to their plan.
oversee the battle and act as a reserve. The exact Mamluk numbers are unknown, but they were probably slightly less than that of Menka Temur's army. Marching through the night, the Mongols arrived early on the 29th of October. It was a massive front, over 24 kilometers in length due to the size of both armies. The wings of both forces, being so far apart, had little knowledge of what was occurring on the other side. While tired from the night march, the Mongols were eager. The battle was initiated with the Mongol right under Alinak charging forth. The Mamluk left and part of their center crumpled and routed under the onslaught. Alinak continued his pursuit, and here Menka Temur's experience and the scale of the battlefield began to show. Proper communication with the command was seemingly absent. Alinak pursued the fleeing Mamluks off the battlefield and as far as the Lake of Homs, where they dismounted to rest, evidently anticipating the rest of the army would soon arrive. A similar charge by the Mongol left wing lacked the numbers of the Mongol right.
Okay, so the right has done fabulous. It broke half the center and the left of the Mamluks. Problem is, now he just said they're gonna wait. Ideally, if they wheeled around and helped attack from the rear, they maybe could. I mean, I don't know how this battle's gonna end. They may still win the Mongols, but I'm thinking like, okay, you've defeated one flank. Ideally, you would want to turn around, right, and then just help make sure you can support the other flank in winning, and get a decisive victory. I don't know if that's gonna come back to bite them now that they're unengaged. We'll see.
So the Mamluk right and center were able to hold and counterattack. Kalawan's actual role in this counterattack isn't clear. Some sources have him personally lead the attack, while in others he kept his position hidden, not even raising his banners so as to avoid Mongol arrows. The Mamluks pushed back the Mongol right, and the Bedouins came around to hit the Mongol flank. The Mongol right fell back to the center, which under Menka Temur was being held in reserve. In the resulting confusion, perhaps thrown by his horse, Menka Temur was injured and unable to command. Most of the Mongols then dismounted to make a final stand around the prince, and ultimately routed under the Mamluk assault.
Dang, dude. My goodness. The Mamluks, dude, they just... Holy crap.
Mamluks chased the fleeing Mongols right to the border with the Ilkhanate, many drowning in the Euphrates or dying in the desert. So deadly was this rout that Mamluk authors said more Mongols were killed in flight than in the actual battle. Calawun and a small guard remained on the battlefield. They were forced to hide their banners and stay silent when the Mongol right wing finally returned, too late to turn the tide.
Yeah, that's what they have to hide. That's funny. Like, just play dead. But it's true though. Like I said earlier, like if the Mongol right had maybe been quicker and turning around, recovering, and just going back, they maybe could have won, you know? But unfortunately, they didn't, so it is what it is. Good on Mamluk Egypt, though. Dang, dude.
Seems they were able to make an orderly retreat back into the Ilkhanate. Abaka was furious at this loss, and intended to return the next year, but died in April 1282. Abaka's successors were not blessed with his same longevity or stability, and until 1295, the Ilkhanate saw a succession of short-lived monarchs and infighting, internal revolts, and renewed attacks by the Golden Horde. For the time being, the immediate Mongol threat to the Mamluks had ended, and Calawun turned to the remaining Frankish strongholds, all possible beachheads for European armies coming to assist the Ilkhans. Cilicia was pillaged, the remaining inland Crusader strongholds were taken, and in April 1289, the Mongols' vassal Tripoli fell. After the death of Abaka's son Arghun Khan in March 1291, the Mamluks used the resulting distraction in the Ilkhanate to take the final major Frankish city in the Holy Land, Acre, leaving them with but a few minor holdings, which fell in the following years. So ended 200 years of Crusader kingdoms.
The Crusader kingdoms are something I'm so fascinated by, and the fact that they managed to last as long as they did. So yeah, that's kind of interesting to see that that's the end of them. I definitely want to look more into them. I find the Crusader kingdom's existence incredibly interesting. But yeah, wow. Mamluk Egypt, dude. You could see why these guys were like one of the powerhouses of Islam, right? Especially in their heyday.
With Sultan al-Khalil's assassination in 1293, the Mamluks entered a period of political instability over the Sultanate. In comparison, 1295 saw the beginning of the reign of the powerful Ghazan Khan, son of Arghun. Ghazan was not the first Muslim Ilkhan, but by his reign, a majority of the Mongols within the Ilkhanate had converted, and made the Ilkhanate an Islamic state. While Ghazan was a Muslim, this did not change Ilkhanate policy to the Mamluks. In the summer of 1299, a Mamluk raid into the Ilkhanate sacked Mardin, desecrating a mosque during Ramadan. Ghazan was thus able to easily obtain a fatwa against the Mamluks for this, presenting himself not as an invader, but a holy warrior coming to avenge atrocities against Islam, which would encourage dissent among Mamluk ranks.
Wow, smart. That's a very smart new angle to take it. Not as conquerors, but as heroes fighting for, I guess, some type of justice, you know? That's smart. That's a good approach to take. I'm wondering if it's going to be effective, though, in dissuading any of the Mamluks' side.
By December 1299, Ghazan and his army of Mongols, Georgians and Armenians under their king Hetum II had crossed the Euphrates. Ghazan bypassed Aleppo and Hama and encamped on the edge of the Syrian desert, where he learned that the Mamluks were gathering at Homs, where they had defeated Menkur Temür 18 years prior. Rather than falling into their trap, Ghazan chose to outflank them, crossing the Syrian desert and coming out onto a stream some 16 kilometers north of Homs.
Oh my goodness. The flank, the oldest trick in the book. Dang, dude, caught them off guard. That's a great maneuver right there. That definitely, I'd imagine, would get them off guard, right? Thinking outside the box. Smart move.
On the 22nd of December. To the Mamluks, it appeared that Ghazan was retreating, and they advanced out of their favourable position to pursue.
Oh no.
In a reverse of the Second Battle of Homs, now the Mamluks were forced to cross the desert, exhausting themselves to reach Ghazan early the next morning, while his own
Dang, how the tables turn. Wow.
troops rested, quenched their thirst, and formed up. Crucially, the Ilkhanate army was under the firm control of Ghazan and his commander Kutluk-Shah, while the young Al-Nazir Muhammad could not control his senior amirs.
Oh no. Oh no.
On the morning of December 23rd, 1299, the Mamluks found Ghazan's army was drawn up. Ghazan commanded the centre, his general Kutluk-Shah commanded the right, and Hetam was on the left. Kutluk-Shah's beating of war drums made the Mamluks believe Ghazan to be located there on the right, and to him they charged, forcing
The Mamluks are being played as chumps. Where they originally had the initiative, the Mongols have now seized that initiative and are just like making them, you know, catching them off guard. They have control. The young Sultan doesn't have full control. They keep misinterpreting things, like thinking the drums signify that the Khan's here, or like, this does not bode well. This is not a good start, guys.
Mongol right back. Ghazan led the counterattack against them, and Kutluk-Shah rallied what forces he could and rejoined his Khan. From 11 AM until nightfall, the battle raged, but finally the Mamluks broke and fled. Ghazan pursued them past Homs before encamping, not wishing to be drawn into a false retreat in the dark. Homs surrendered without a fight, and Ghazan took the Sultan's treasure. Next, Ghazan marched on to Damascus, which also surrendered without a fight.
Oh my goodness, dude. Ghazan is out here avenging the Elds that that the Mongols took under Baybars. This is bad. Dude, the Mamluks, bro. This is a really bad position. Holy crap.
Though its citadel held out. It seems almost the entire Mamluk garrison of Syria had retreated, perhaps recalled to defend the capital. Mongol raiding parties were making it as far as Gaza, with one source reporting they even entered Jerusalem, and the Sultanate seemed poised to fall. But on February 5th, 1300, Ghazan withdrew from Damascus, returning to the Ilkhanate. Kutluk-Shah had been left to take the citadel of Damascus, but he soon followed the Khan. By the end of May, the Mamluks had retaken Syria.
Oh, wow.
Exactly why Ghazan withdrew is unclear.
Dang, talk about luck and good fortune. That seemed like the very end right there, at least of Mamluk presence in Syria. Dude, the Mamluks definitely have luck on their side.
Possibly, reports of a Neguderi invasion in the east of his realm demanded his attention, or he feared there would not be sufficient pasturage for his large army to make the trip to Egypt. Whichever the reason, Ghazan had lost the greatest chance to destroy the Mamluks. Ghazan did cross.
Yes, that was a wasted opportunity. If he had kept up the momentum, who knows what could have happened, but he essentially squandered a great opportunity. Dude, Ghazan came in with all the momentum and like snuffed out his own flame in a sense.
The Euphrates at the end of December 1300, reaching as far as Aleppo, but heavy rains rendered military operations untenable. In 1303, Ghazan ordered Kutlug Shah back into Syria, but he was defeated at Marj al-Safar near Damascus in April. Ghazan's death the next year, at only 34 years old, prevented his next assault. His brother and successor, Uljatu, ordered the final Ilkhanid attack on the Sultanate, an embarrassing effort in winter 1312, which saw the army retreat not from the royal Mamluks, but the stiff resistance of ordinary townsfolk.
Oh man, that Mongol invincibility shattered, eh? Wow.
Uljatu's son, Abu Sa'id, ultimately organized peace with the Mamluks in the early 1320s, but the Ilkhanate did not long outlive this treaty. Abu Sa'id's death in 1335 without an heir saw the Ilkhanate torn apart by regional commanders, the Jalayirids, Chobanids, Muzaffarids and Injuids, among others, who appointed their own puppet khans. For the Mamluks, they were unable to take advantage of the Ilkhanate's disintegration, as when Al-Nasir Muhammad died in 1341, they entered their own period of anarchy. In Anatolia, the power vacuum from the collapse of the Ilkhanate left the peninsula as a collection of minor beyliks, including one ruled by the warlord Orhan Ghazi, the seed from which the mighty—
Yep, and we do know about the rise of the Ottomans. We covered that series. So that's a really interesting, the effects that this all had. And you kind of start seeing the downward fall of the Mamluks after they achieved their greatest— I feel like their greatest heights definitely were at this time, defeating repeatedly the Ilkhanate. And, you know, yeah, I feel like now with the rise of the Ottomans, we definitely see the decline of the Mamluks.
Ottoman Empire would spring. All of these states soon found themselves affected by a new onslaught arising from the fragmented realm of the Chagatai.
Yep, and then Timur shows up and wrecks both of them. Freaking Timur, man.
It's Temur. But that is a video for another day, so make sure you are subscribed to our channel and have—
Another great video, my friends, and we have more Mongols to watch tomorrow. Bye, everyone.